to another Wednesday edition of Tap Talk. Happy Wednesday, late April to you. Hopefully you got to enjoy some of the sunshine that we got up here in Stone Lake today. Starting to feel just a little bit like springtime, which is kind of nice. Tonight, we wanted to catch up. We didn't see you last week because I was up in Duluth. We were doing a latte art competition, and that was a really cool time. Quick shout out to Duluth Coffee Company for hosting the event at another location at 190 degree coffee and tea. So a great spot if you want to experience a little bit of Duluth coffee and beer. It's right next to the Bent Paddle Tap Room over in the Lincoln Park area. So really cool spot and a fun venue and just a really good time. So bummed that we missed you last week, but we were having a lot of fun playing with latte art. So welcome to this week's edition of Tap Talk. Got a beer in my hand. How about you? I'll start this off with, I'll prompt you here and I'll prompt you again. One theme for tonight is favorite beers, and that can either be favorite beer style or overall favorite beer. I get this question all the time working in beer for as long as I have. Always, what's your favorite beer? What do you enjoy the most? And oftentimes I find myself trying not to cop out and just say, well, I love all beers because, I mean, yes, but at the same point I like to try and have an answer. One that I've got here is definitely in the running. It's up there. I don't know that I could call it all-time favorite, but it's real close. So if you've got a favorite beer and want to give a shout out, go ahead and put it in the comments and I'll try and give you a little bit of love as we're going through. So the one I've got in my hand is Lagunitas Waldo's Special Ale. It's a triple IPA, which is a little bit of a made-up thing if we're being totally honest with ourselves. Let me give you a sip. I'll give you a sip here a little bit. I'll pour some in my mouth. How about that? This particular beer. Okay. Going back for 1 second. So, favorite beers. Great. Love that. Also, the other theme for this evening is strong beers. So, we're going to showcase 3 strong beers they have on tap. Talk about what does that mean for a beer to be strong, how does it get to be so strong, and some unique bits about them. So this one from Lagunitas, from California. This is a beer they only make once a year, and because they're from Northern California and they're very not subtle about what they like to enjoy there in Northern California. This beer is brewed in honor of 420 every year, part of the legend of the high school students from Northern California that would venture out to try and find the mythical hop field out there, and they'd meet at 420, and that's where that whole, legend has it, that's where that all kind of history came from. So that's this beer. Okay, hold on, I gotta shout out Ashley LaFolie. Wow, we're married for a reason. One of my favorites as well. Ooh, Sarah, the French Toast Ale, I think that's Brewing Project. That's a really tasty one. Yes, it's good to find out what your favorites are. It might be different from minute to minute. That's okay. So this beer, triple IPA, clocks in at just under 12% alcohol. It's sort of absurd, and part of what makes it ridiculous is that it is super. I'm not gonna say it's easy drinking because that would be kind of pushing it. But for being as strong as it is, it drinks. It's deceptive. It goes down fairly smooth. So in this case, strength, we're referring to a little bit of marketing talk. Triple IPA, backing up for just 1 second, IPA, I think we might have mentioned before, stands for India Pale Ale. It's tends to be a stronger beer that really showcases hops in the recipe. So you tend to get a lot of aroma and flavor from the hops, which can range anywhere from pine cones or citrus to grapefruit, well, grapefruit's citrus, duh, to berries, tropical fruits, even sometimes smell a bit like cannabis. Also, it's no subtlety that those plants are cousins. In fact, they're related, so there is a reason for that. So again, if you're just joining us, shout out your favorite beer or beer style in the comments, and I'll give you a little toast here. We're enjoying some Lagunitas Waldo's Special Ale. This one is Lagunitas has made some real strong IPAs in the past. This one has just got everything ramped up to top notch. But despite all that, this is not hazy, as you'll see. This is kind of a classic light golden ale. It's got a bit of a honey malt base to it. It's really delicious and is kind of notorious for getting us into trouble if you were to take too much of this home and suck it down. So this one's around just for a limited time. Come in and enjoy it while you can. So cheers to the Waldos. Okay, next up. Oh boy, these beers look awfully similar. Let's see if we can do the sniff test. I think I know which one I want to go with next. Yes, got it. All right, this one clocks in for me. Again, don't know that I could say, I don't know if I could say absolute all-time favorite. Ooh, Chuck's got Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, classic, love that one. Tom Melnery Half Brothers IPA. Where are they from, Tom? I don't know of Half Brothers. I'm curious now, I want to try it. This beer is the first time we've had this on tap, but we've had it in bottles for a little while. This comes to us from the Netherlands. It's Dutch, and it is the Quad, the Trap Quad. Just like all-time wonderful beer and kind of a style-defining beer. So let's have a sip quick. For a lot of people, this experience of having like a crazy Belgian beer, we've got David, microphone out of Chicago. They make some great stuff. Tom, okay, I'm looking forward to that beer from North Dakota. Bring some by. This is a Dutch Trappist beer, so meaning that it is brewed under the Trappist order. It has to have represent 3 characteristics, either brewed under the supervision or directly by the monks. It has to support the monastery, and I always forget the third one. Call me out on it. I don't recall off the top of my head. Here I am being a rusty cicerone. If you got the third Trappist requirement, go ahead and fire it off. But this one comes across almost more like wine, where it has more in common. Ooh, Dalton, Belgian Blonde for Angry Minnow. Tough to beat. That's a great one. Where's Waldo? I like that. Ooh, we could do that. Drink enough of these Waldos, you'll be wondering where you might be. This one from the Netherlands, it has, yes, kind of port wine almost characteristic. Like it has some dark fruit, sort of raisiny qualities about it, and it also has a bit of like a banana clove kind of character that you might get from like a Hefeweizen or a Dunkelweizen, a dark Hefeweizen, if you've ever had that, German style wheat beer. It's a lot of esters, which come from the yeast production, which is part of the strong ale category that we're talking about here. In order to ferment a beer up to, this one's 10% alcohol, in order to get a beer that strong, you need to have a yeast that can tolerate that high of alcohol content, because yeast will only digest sugar up to a certain point, and some yeast strains will either die at a certain alcohol content or they'll create really unpleasant flavors in the beer. But generally speaking, when you get a stronger beer, particularly Belgian beers, the yeast character really comes out. It's really pronounced. And that's where you get a lot of these fruit notes from. There's no fruit used in this beer. It just comes out from a mixture of the malts and the fermentation process, the yeast here. So a really cool beer, very strong, but also kind of suitably treated as wine. So I've heard the phrase that beer is to Belgium what wine is to France. This is from the Netherlands, but it's kind of just across the border. One of only about just over a dozen Trappist breweries in the world. And a classic thing is having the proper glassware, which we do here at the Punk. This La Trappe chalice just looks extremely handsome, filled with some quad in it. So we've got this one on tap, but we always keep it in stock in bottles along with the double and hopefully the triple again soon here. So this is a great one to enjoy at the end of the evening, share with some friends. Very good with cooking. You could make a nice dessert out of this, braise some beef perhaps, make a stew. So yeah, lots of variations on this one. So this is a great introduction into kind of some strong Belgian beers, and the quad being of the double, triple, and quad. We'll get into that another time. This is kind of the big brother of the set. So cheers. Okay, and wrapping up our brief foray into some strong beers on the lineup here, we have a really cool beer that is classic. It's an OG, but it's still fresh and cool and interesting, and we just featured it last week. This is Sierra Nevada Bigfoot Barley Wine. This one prompts a lot of questions of, is it barley or is it wine or is it beer? What's the deal? Let's have a sip first. There's no doubt about this one. It's not subtle at all. It's got a big punch in the mouth, lots of malt, like toasty caramel, like rich, like almost grapefruit kind of quality about it. And then just a big smack of like dry, bitter, like resinous hops. So if you really like a nice classic like IPA, but ramped up to, again, just under 10% alcohol on this one, 9.6, this is just a big badass of a beer. So what's behind the name, barley wine? What does that all mean? To break it down simply, it is roughly portraying that as a beer of wine strength. So barley, made with barley, not with grapes, but wine of wine strength. It's an English term that came about. These beers were often made for royalty or largely royalty, people who could afford it, because in order to make a beer with this much ingredients to get the alcohol content, it would have been expensive to brew. So the ways between these two different beers, between the barley wine here and the La Trappe Quad, there's two sort of different methods of getting that alcohol content. One is straight up basically all from barley, unless Sierra Nevada's got something else up their sleeve, but using all grains, just using more than you would in a normal beer. If you're making a 5% alcohol beer, you're gonna roughly double the amount of grains that you're adding, not exactly, but close to it, to get more sugar into the beer, thus creating a higher alcohol content. And stronger beers tend to drink stronger, like you can taste more body in the beer. Whereas with La Trappe, they're often, Belgian beers are substituting a bit of candy sugar, like rock sugar, highly fermentable, but it doesn't leave behind body like, so when you're thinking of adding that grain, the more you put in there, when it ferments, it's still, there's like substance to it. It's kind of like almost like making syrup. When you boil that down, there's still more kind of proteins and substance to the beer. Whereas when you're using sugar, it basically ferments and it just kind of creates a thinner body. So even though that beer is a little bit stronger, the La Trappe, this one has a richer kind of body to it. Last week we did a tasting with Bigfoot, and we featured what we have on tap as the 2022 version, and then we had vintages going all the way back to 2010. So we got to have an opportunity to sort of taste how this beer ages over the years. Strong beers are good candidates for beers that you can age. As a general rule, all beer is best enjoyed fresh, but some beers get more interesting with age. It's all subjective. You may enjoy Bigfoot when it's fresh and kind of bold and hoppy and dank and resinous, for lack of a better term. And as it ages, those hops kind of fade to the background, and you get a little bit more of that character, almost similar to the La Trappe, where you get raisin and kind of that date, fig, whole dark fruit kind of thing going on, and it becomes a little bit more mellow. It changes the profile of the beer, and that's not necessarily better or worse, but it's kind of interesting. So this beer can hold up to some serious aging. All right, Ashley, what did we get? She's got the Trappist designation on here. Brewed within the walls by monks or under supervision, must be controlled by the monastery and have a business culture compatible with monastic project. Income takes care of the monks and upkeep of the abbey. Leftovers used for charity. Very tightly controlled. So boom, there you go. I was close. I'll take it. So anyway, when creating these high strength beers, there is not a lot of room for error. It's easy to make a really strong beer that doesn't necessarily taste very good, because when you start playing with those high alcohol contents, the yeast can kind of, like I was saying, kind of go all over the place. You get a lot stronger flavors from it. So to make a really drinkable, like balanced strong ale or strong beer in general is really kind of shows class of the brewery. Sierra Nevada's been making this beer, I believe, since early 80s. I was just at Sierra Nevada a couple of weeks ago when we were in Asheville and saw bottles with caps still with liquid in them, I think going back to 85, so at least that old. So that's crazy. That's super cool. I like it. I'm a charity. Nice one, Dave. Good candidate for roasting. All right. So this kind of sums up some of our favorite strong beers. Note on these, take them in small doses. 5 ounces are your friend if you want to try a couple. With all these, we serve in a 12-ounce glass, and they're beers to be kind of treated with some respect. They're not ones you're going to be slamming down a whole bunch of, otherwise you'll be slammed down yourself. So go easy with some of these. They're really good beers to share if you get a big bottle or bring home a growler. Well suited to sharing and enjoying. And soon we might be able to sit outside and actually enjoy beers on patio. It's a crazy idea if it actually warms up here. Okay, last question I'll address. Chuck, are lagers also hard to brew versus an ale? Are stronger beers versus a lager? I think generally speaking, our question lagers versus ales, which is kind of harder to brew. Generally speaking, lagers are more difficult to brew. They require a longer fermentation process. So comparing roughly maybe a two week-ish fermentation to 4 to 6 to 8 week fermentation. Ales, shorter fermentation, lagers, longer fermentation. The more time the beer is fermenting, the more opportunity there is for problems to arise. So the more that conditions need to be balanced and maintained to make a good product. So generally speaking, lagers, it's kind of a rule of people who are into beer that a really good, if a brewery can make a really good lager, it's a mark that brewery is generally a good quality brewery. That's not 100% accurate, but it is a general rule of thumb that if a brewery can make a good lager, generally they can make lots of other good stuff. So in recap, Sierra Nevada barley wine, Sierra Nevada Bigfoot barley wine, heavy hitter, again, only available once a year, so get it while you can, but stash some away, drink it later. La Trappe Quad from the Netherlands, Trappist, strong dark ale, available all the time and highly delicious, also good for aging. And the Lagunitas Waldo Special Ale. I gotta get one more. This is up there for one of my favorite beers, partially because you can't get it all the time, and it does not age all that well. I mean, you could argue that it will hold up over time, but part of what makes it so good is the fresh, kind of juicy, rich hop quality in there. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we're gonna be on a more regular path, and I can kind of keep the train rolling with the Tap Talk on regular Wednesdays, and the more I do it, the more likely I am to go find me a cool GoPro and make this even more snazzy production for the future. But for now, we had a great time. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have something good to enjoy, whether it's a beer or just a nice night in, and we'll see you soon down here at Punk. All right, have a good night.